Chapter 33: The Bamboo Marshal. Five Bamboo was a very strange and mysterious person. In Fan Xian's eyes, Uncle Five Bamboo's life was miserable, having lived for some 30 years without a companion by his side, and without even a single person to talk to other than himself. Even some of the residents of Tanyu Port still believed that Wu Zhu was not only blind, but also mute. He always had that black cloth over his eyes, and Fan Xian thought to himself that there must be a horrible disability underneath, which was why he was so reluctant to let others see. Teacher Fei Jia called him the Five Greats, and it was obvious that Uncle Wu Zhu had been in the official circle in Kyoto back then, but his behavior was completely without a trace of official air, and even the taste of dust and mundanity was extremely rare, somewhat like an immortal who didn't eat earthly flames and fires. When he thought of this, Fan Xian subconsciously looked toward him. Five Bamboos asked the question and then returned to silence, coldly looking at the twilight in the sky on the sea, the light red light shrouded in his body, reflected in the black cloth on his eyes, reflecting the color of fire jumping. Fan Xian suddenly thought of a very scary possibility, and after pondering for a long time, he murmured and asked, "Uncle, you were just looking at those images of what looked like immortal mountains in a daze. You didn't come down from the sky, did you?" He was now able to accept such things as inner strength, and even vaguely believed that the heavens had eyes, which led to what happened to him in this life. But to say that his partner, who he had been with for more than 10 years, suddenly transformed into an exiled immortal on the clouds of the ninth heaven would still be too much for him to bear. Traveling through the world plus immortality would only scare him to the ground. Five Bamboo shook his head and said faintly, "I just seem to remember where I used to be when I came out with Mississippi." "Are you sure you're not a fairy, and my old mom isn't a fairy? Are there fairies in this world? Aren't there temples?" "Who said the temple is inhabited by fairies?" "Uncle, are you remembering something?" "No, I just forgot something not so important." Five Bamboos stood up, still nodding imperceptibly towards the end of the sea, as if saying goodbye to something, then said softly, "Let's go back. There are some things I can tell you." Fan Xian smiled slightly, knowing that the other party hadn't forgotten that promise, that as soon as he turned 16, he would tell himself something about his mother. Walking to the edge of the cliff, he inhaled a breath, and the true qi in his body began to flow slowly, his entire body attached to the cliff. The true qi was transported along the meridians to his palm, and when it was forced out of his palm less than a silky distance away, it was swiftly withdrawn back into his body from outside of the edge of his palm, and right between his palms. It was extremely skillfully formed into a slightly sunken downward true qi contact surface, because the true qi was invisible. It was guaranteed to form a perfect seal along the edge of the palm. The palm of his hand was firmly affixed to the smooth rock, holding his entire body in place by virtue of the vacuum's adsorption. Then, removing his true qi, one hand would detach itself from the rock, and in this manner, Fan Xian appeared to be climbing down the cliff with ease, looking just like Spider-Man. An ordinary martial arts practitioner would not be able to do this, no matter how abundant the true qi in his body was. The reason Fan Xian was able to do this all depended on his distinctive cultivation method and body structure, as well as his distinctive way of thinking. In this world, all strong martial artists only care about the words reality and potential, where the word reality naturally refers to the abundance of true qi in the body, while potential is a description that can almost only be understood, somewhat similar to the realm. Spells that echoed nature were always the end of the road that did not enter the eyes of the truly strong. In Five Bamboo's view, the so-called real potential is actually just the quality of the quantity of true qi and the degree of precision in the control of true qi, and today's Fan Xian, after 10 years of his teaching, is hovering roughly between level 3 and level 7.5, with basically no progress in 4 years. Strong martial artists would subconsciously use their own true qi as a disposable tool or weapon, like water, to attack the opponent, and once it was poured out, they wouldn't even think of taking it back. After a big battle, the true qi is exhausted anyway, can also meditate to recover. No wonder everyone in the world thinks like this. After all, once the true qi leaves the body, and then want to take it back, this itself is a bit of a fantasy idea. But Fan Xian is not the same. His body's true qi circulation line was originally different from the average person, and the back of the back into the snowy mountains is the same as there is an opening, and the outside world yuan qi constitutes the size of the 2 cycles, so he is for the true qi sensing to be much more keen. At the same time, Fan Idle is very idle and stingy at the same time. That's why he keeps trying to force the true qi out of his body and then take it back. Having experimented very hard for 3 years, he could now finally retract his true qi again from the other side within a distance of 1/10 of an inch of the true qi leaving his palm. With such a short distance, it was impossible to attack the enemy's body, so Fan Xian somewhat sadly admitted that his 3 years had basically amounted to doing nothing. But since he had learned some useless gimmicks, he had to think of some use for them, and since he found it hard to climb the sea cliffs every 3 days, he used this trick of returning his true qi to climb the mountain in a brainstorm. Perhaps Fan Xian was better than the people of this world in that his thinking was not limited by the times he had traveled to, and he had no preconceived notions. Everything was new to him, and everything was possible for him. Fan Xian swam down the cliff like a fish. Looking up, 5 bamboos had turned into a small black dot standing on the edge of the peak. He was in no hurry, looking up with a smile. He had always enjoyed watching 5 bamboos descend the mountain. 5 bamboo took a step forward, as if the ground was flat in front of him. As soon as his feet dangled in the air, his figure began to float down. Only every 3 feet or so, he would casually stretch out a palm and gently press it between the stones on the cliff, slightly slowing down his descent. So stretching out his palm a dozen times, the whole person will be expressionless standing below the cliff. 5 bamboo's way of descending seemed simple, but that experience of direction, angle, strength, speed, and even sea breeze was counted in this split second of time. Such a strong ability to calculate and judge. Definitely one of the top strongest in this world. If one thought of him as a blind man, then one could remove one of those 2. Although he had already seen it countless times, Fan Xian still couldn't help but applaud and marvel. Blindly handsome one.